Joe Marino, Locked On Bills podcast, joining us on the Wester Hotline here on a rainy Wednesday morning. Joe, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, guys. It's never ending with the Josh Allen-centric conversation, right? And people forget that he had Diggs in a top 5 defense, right? Oh, too reliant on Josh Allen. They can run the ball, and too reliant. It's always, and maybe that's just because Josh Allen plays the way that he does and he's so good. That it's always going to be that way. And it's not necessarily that there's too much on him. I think this is how he plays.
Is this just also people not knowing how to cover mobile quarterbacks? Like,
maybe.
Because we really haven't been doing it that long, where like half the league's starting quarterbacks and the best, like Jackson, Allen, have been this athletic. Because the previous generation of those guys was never a part of it.
No, yeah, it's the difference. These guys can actually throw it too, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's the big layer to this piece of it. But I will say that it's a lot harder for your mobile quarterback to be maximized when you're not consistently winning one-on-one battles on the perimeter so that he can make throws. So you can commit some extra attention to the pocket, and I think you've seen a lot of that so far against this Bills team.
This all reminds me, a couple of years ago, they were too Josh Allen-centric, and there was he's responsible for 77% of their total yards, and I did all the math on like all the other quarterbacks, and they were also responsible for that same amount. Like right now, the Chiefs, they've got Mahomes, and their leading rusher is Pacheco with 271, and Patrick Mahomes has 250. Like, are they too Mahomes centric? Like, I think that's how it's supposed to work. Anyway, this is pet peeve kind of.
Right.
Yeah. And honestly, Joe, like I find myself these last years, in these Joe Brady years, wanting consistently, feeling like I need more Josh Allen, because whether it's the quick pass, the quick game, the screen game, or the handoffs on second downs, I'm thinking I got Josh Allen. Shouldn't I be using him a little bit more? But I don't know. We're always trying to find that right balance.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to that, Jeremy. I feel similarly.
So, all right, Joe, your latest episode of the Locked On Bills podcast, you did 9 fixes for these Bills, and we'll talk about a couple of them here. I feel like we started the show today talking about the difference in this 2-game losing streak and other 2-game losing streaks over the years, and I noted a couple differences. One, the bye week makes it sit with you longer, right? We can all sit here and kind of ruminate on what's going on. And the other big thing, there were 2 others. One is New England's here. And the other one is the last 2 times they had these streaks, they made a change. They fired Ken Dorsey 2 years ago. Last year, they traded for Amari Cooper very soon after the 2-game losing streak. They beat the Jets and then immediately traded for Cooper. So we kind of saw them look at what was happening and think, we got to make a change. And this time, it's 2-game losing streak, it's a bye. And if there are going to be changes, maybe we start to see them this week. So what are some of the big changes you'd like to see them make if it's not outside guys coming in, which is still on the table? But will we see, do you think, maybe big changes from the way they operate out of this bye?
Well, I think you're getting some natural changes defensively with Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi coming back, or I guess not coming back, being part of the team now. In addition to your ramp up for Maxwell Harrison to get back into the lineup is, it's here. His practice window's been opened, and, somewhere in the next few weeks he'll be activated and have a chance to elevate what the Bills have at corner. And so I think those are pretty big moves for the defense kind of taking on the form that they want it to this year with some of the changes that we've kind of anticipated. And, I think there could be more lineup changes. I wouldn't be surprised if later on today or sometime this week we find out that Jordan Poyer has been signed to the active roster, and if he, doesn't at least challenge or maybe take the place of Taylor Rapp at safety. So I think you can see some of that on defense. But offensively, I think it really comes back to them being more deliberate about their utilization of heavy personnel. And when I mean heavy personnel, I think multiple tight ends, multiple backs on the field. And the Bills brass, they talk about it being a mismatch league and how do you create mismatches. And I think when you look at the Bills offense, the mismatch is what they can do with multiple tight ends and multiple backs and how they can be two-dimensional out of that. We know they can run the ball out of that. They can pass the ball out of that as well. They just need to do that more. And I think that should be a big part of it. The other big change that I think needs to happen is, I just don't think there's a justification for Keon Coleman to be the most targeted player on this team and be the leading snap taker at receiver by more than 40 snaps. I don't understand what gives that merit, whether that's the fact that he's been disciplined twice in less than a year and a half, or that there's been very inconsistent results when featuring him in the offense. And so I think you have to find ways to get away from that, get more into your big people. And then I also think running backs in the passing game is another huge one for me, where the Bills running backs have 17 catches so far this year, should probably be about double that. And I think that would help with some of the attention that Josh Allen's getting in the pocket if you could start making teams pay more for the attention they're giving to him by throwing the ball to running backs. I think you can create some more offense.
Yeah, Ty Johnson, I mean, last year he had 18 catches, 3 touchdowns. So far, we're 6 games into the year. He's got 2 catches for 19 yards total, which looks like they might want an uptick there. And is James Cook worthy of this too? Like, Cook has shown us in the passing game and the running game that he can be explosive. He has some high-profile drops. There's no doubt about that, Joe. But I almost feel like I want to look at the other side of it. Is why are they high-profile? Because he's open down the field and Allen hits him in the hand. So, like, you get the hard part done. You got open. Let's give him a couple more chances here if you want to get this passing game a little bit more dynamic and starting to trust James Cook again.
100%. It almost feels like that 2023 stretch of like legitimately 6, 7, 8 touchdowns that he dropped. Like, it was pretty obvious that there were some issues there, but he was open and he was touted as a pass catching back. I mean, Sean McDermott's even said as part of like his development story, he said multiple times, yeah, we drafted him to be a pass catching back. And then he became a feature back and he's not even really doing much pass catching. And I think you look at some of these other top backs across the league, and McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson, and even Saquon Barkley to an extent. These guys get these opportunities to be moved around the formation, isolated up on linebackers, running a full route tree, or at least more than just flat routes and rail routes. And that's a big way, I think, for this Bills team that is kind of lacking at receiver to get some more production in the passing game. So. Feels like low-hanging fruit. The metrics last year were off the charts, except for frequency of throws to running backs. All the efficiency metrics were amazing, and I think it's kind of happening again this year, and hopefully that's a big change here coming out of the bye.
Yeah. Bijan McCaffrey, I mean, those guys you see line up out wide sometimes too. Like, they'll move them around everywhere. Yeah. The Coleman part of it, Joe, you often hear, I remember hearing this first about Coleman like the day after he was drafted, that he might be more beneficial to an offense playing in like a big slot role. He doesn't do it a lot, but do you have reason to believe that would just work? Like, I guess how convinced would you be that if they were to move him around into different positions that they would get more out of him? Or do you think it's more there's more to it than just move him and you'll be fine?
Well, I don't disagree with the idea that Keon Coleman would be a more effective player if he had more opportunities from the slot. I just don't think it makes the Bills' offense better, because anything you would ask Keon Coleman to do from the slot, I would way rather have that done by Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid. And so, that's kind of where my mind goes. Yeah, sure, you can get more out of Coleman there, but I don't think it makes your offense better. And ideally, Coleman can be, I don't know what they were thinking. Did they think this was George Pickens when they picked him to be this X receiver that you just throw it up to and he can go gets it all the time? Because that's kind of how they're treating him, and he doesn't make those types of plays. And I think that's, if he could be that, I can see the appeal of all right, targets and snap share, and you get one receiver on the field and some of your 3 tight end or 2 back or 2 tight end and 2 back stuff, and that's the one receiver you'd want out there. Okay, but he doesn't do that. And I'm not saying the book's written on the kid, but I think there's a needle to thread between, all right, we see some potential here, we see a role and how it can go, versus most targeted and most played receiver on the team. And so I think they got to strike that balance and make that make a little bit more sense. But yes, back to the slot piece, I think it would help Coleman. I don't think it helps the Bills' offense.
Is one of the answers here that you think, like, when the ball is going outside or is going, more than 10 yards down the field, because you tweet out some numbers on this, that the ball maybe should be going to Josh Palmer more often than it is going to Coleman?
Yes, I would say there's a real obvious one to me. I think, especially in these one-on-one routes, right? You're talking about the Bills, I don't know what it is. They get wide-eyed. Keon Coleman one-on-one on the perimeter against whoever, right? That's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's Christian Gonzalez or if it's, who's the other receiver? A.J. Terrell. It's like, yeah, we get wide-eyed. These guys are good man coverage corners. Like, there's not a prayer that Keon's going to uncover against this. And they just want to throw it. And I don't understand it. It feels like wasted downs to me. And so I think that Palmer gives you a much better opportunity to create separation in those types of situations when it's, hey, isolated, route them up, get open, Josh is going to hit you. I think Coleman might be, fifth or sixth on the team in options for that type of look, in my opinion.
Joe Marino on the Western Hotline. All right, Joe, to what the Bills do well that they maybe should get back to. The first couple weeks of the season feel like Jackson Hawes is a household name. They're big people packages. They're running all over people. They're throwing to the tight ends. Is it as simple as just going right back to that because that's what was the bread and butter for this team early on?
Well, yes, and I think they are still doing that. I don't think that they completely got away from it, but I think being two-dimensional, right, being able to be more deliberate about throwing and getting your play action stuff going out of those heavy personnel sets. But then also, I think the last two games, which is what we're all really focusing on, where the offense, just didn't get it done, and the defense had its struggles, but still held Atlanta to 24 and New England to 23, and that was, the Bills still lost by multiple scores. I think they kind of chased the script in both games where they were down, 2 scores, pretty early against both opponents. And it felt like the Bills got into this, oh my God, we have to score 14 points on this drive. You don't have to, and you didn't need to. And once they kind of settled down in the third, usually in the third quarter in both games, they got back to the run and they moved the ball a little bit, and then they had more chances to score, and they went right back into their, hey, we're going to air it out and not kind of be true to what we can do best. And so I think that's what Sean McDermott means when he says the offense got cute. And so allowing those principles, those heavy personnel, run and pass out of it to be your foundation, and not abandon it quickly to get into your 11 personnel stuff because you're down 10 or you're down 14 with 40 minutes of game clock left. You don't have to panic like that. And I think maybe that's been a bit of the issue here the last few weeks.
Joe Marino on the Western Hotline of the Locked On Bills podcast. All right, Joe, to the defense and what they can do. It will be the debut of Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, but people will know, like, Ogunjobi, what's he going to be? A veteran in the league that's not a practice squad guy called up because the Bills have been kind of juggling that on the defensive line. Hoyt, though, without trying to make him some sort of savior, he's an interesting piece. And what you've seen from him in his career and the little we saw in the preseason, what do you think he can bring to this defense? And not just in his individual play, but what he can allow the defensive coaching staff to do in terms of personnel, mixing things up, and just variability?
Yeah, he's really athletic. He's got great size, and he's really versatile. And because of those things, it should unlock some options for your scheme. You think about the Bills have played a lot more 3 linebacker stuff this year. They're at 24% 3 linebacker. That's top half of the league in base defense. And I think you can at times leverage Michael Hoyt as your Sam linebacker, your strong side linebacker, and walk him up on the line of scrimmage. And now you're in 5-man fronts. And you're able to have Bosa, Rousseau, and Hoyt on the field. And so when teams challenge you with big people, right, you kind of have an answer for that where you feel like you got what you need to defend the run, but, you can still be aggressive with how you rush with 5, and 3 of those being, Hoyt, Bosa, and Rousseau. Or, hey, if you want him to spot drop a little, play the hook curl, play the flat, he can handle that as well. So I think that's a big part of how that can help your defense. And, the Bills like to run a lot of dime. They're also a top half of the league in dime. And the Bills get to dime in some unique ways. They'll get, dime just means 6 defensive backs. So you can have any combination of 5 linebackers and defensive linemen. And usually you'll see teams go with 4 down linemen, 1 linebacker, and then 6 defensive backs. Well, the Bills will get there with 3 down linemen, 2 linebackers, and the 6 defensive backs. And I think you can use that linebacker spot to be Michael Hoyt, and that gives you more options with how you want to play a mirror player or to commit to the quarterback, to rush, to drop. I just think there's a lot of personnel variety that he can unlock, not to mention that individually he's versatile and physical, and he's got a good pass rush plan. And I think he can really unlock a lot of what this defense can be. So he's definitely a silver lining here for hope for this defense to take a turn here down the stretch.
What about Max Hairston if he gets back, Joe? I don't know if it'll be this week. I mean, he's just going to start practicing. Let's say it goes well. Like, he can get out there and he's there mentally. Going back to what you thought of him at the draft, like, what do you think he could mean for the Bills' defense if it looks like he can really play?
Yeah, going back to my pre-draft thoughts on Maxwell Hairston, the word that I always went back to is that this guy just hunts. He hunts the football, whether that's playing in zone and triggering and driving, and whether that's playing the ball or coming and clicking and closing and making a tackle. And while I think it's fair to have some questions about like run defense and tackling, mostly due to size, and he had some rough moments on tape later in 2024 at Kentucky when he was kind of playing through that shoulder injury. If you watch the first half of 2024 and 2023, this guy was extremely aggressive to go and fit the run. And so I think that level of aggression, that the ball skills, the willingness to drive, on routes and drive on players, I think is needed big time in this secondary. And I think there's some variance that's going to come with that, right? He's going to drive on a ball and receiver's going to catch it and run for a bunch of yards. Like, that'll happen. But he's also going to make some plays on the ball, and he's going to make quarterbacks think a little bit, throwing his way because of that aggression that he's going to play with if he, is the player we watch at Kentucky, right? Which is really different compared to what we've seen from Trey White, which is, don't really have that ability to close with speed, and you have to play leverage and play with cushion and just position myself to make tackles. I think we're all a little bit more eager to see the other side of that.
Joe, on Carolina, how much concern should Bills fans have? Like, it's a Panthers team that at the start of the year we would have said, like, all right, win, guaranteed. They've got 4 wins. They beat the Cowboys, right? Like, that's not nothing. That's a team that has an explosive offense. They were able to keep up. With Andy Dalton in, is that a clear downgrade? Is that a little bit of a nervousness? Like, how do you rate Carolina's chances in this game, in the matchup?
Well, I'd rather play Bryce Young, I'll tell you that. I think Andy Dalton's the type of quarterback that, nobody wants him to be their starter, but against this Bills defense that has had a lot of space available to throw the football, I think Andy Dalton's a veteran that's going to know where to go with the ball. But I think what it comes down to with Carolina, it's their rushing offense, 4th in EPA per rush this year. They got a physical offensive line. They got 2 backs in Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle that can run with physicality. And they get a lot of yards after contact. They get a lot of displacement, and that's been an issue for this Bills defense. And so I think you're going to see a Carolina team that's going to want to run the ball, 40 times and see what the Bills do about it. And so I think that's the big thing. Look, Andy Dalton's throwing to very young receivers. So you like to think that you're not going to come and get lit up by Andy Dalton, but I think he can be sufficient. And obviously the real story is how they can run the football. So, obviously, the key to me is the Bills and scoring points and then making Carolina play a different style of game than they want to. I think that's going to be the key. But, there's some things that Carolina does well that the Bills have struggled with this year.
Joe found a stat to this point that the Bills are number 132 in the league. On the farthest end,
I'm looking for it.
Pass rate under expected. Basically,
against defense,
right? The defense. Basically, of all the teams in the NFL, the NFL has looked at the Bills, the teams that play them, and said, run all day on them. And they've faced an under expected pass level because of it. So it's one of the things about the pass defense that actually makes me nervous, Joe, is that we haven't even really seen a team try to attack them in that department yet. It's really been the run game.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know. I obviously watch the games, and I sometimes think that teams should run the ball more against the Bills. Sometimes if they're getting second and long, like, go ahead and run it. It's okay. You got a good chance of getting some yards, at least getting into the third and manageable. So hopefully Carolina doesn't want to do that. But if they stay committed to it, I think that'll be a challenge for Buffalo. But again, I think it comes down to this Bills offense has got to go out and score. That's the best way they can help their defense is to score points. And I expect to see, this is a revenge game for Joe Brady. We've kind of seen some of this too, right?
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, and we saw Dennis Allen, right, with the Bears, and that was a big deal for them in their post-game win over the Saints this past week. All right, it's the Bills' turn, right? This team fired Joe Brady after a season and a quarter, and he was the fall guy for Matt Rule. Feels like Joe Brady probably owes them a little something. So let's see them put it together here, put up a bunch of points, and get to 5-2 and go play Kansas City in Week 9.
Joe, they're in Carolina, of course, on Sunday. You got events going on. They're in your neck of the woods. If Bills Mafia's going down, where can they come see you?
Yeah, we got something going on Saturday at the Waxhaw Tap House, 1 o'clock. Go to thejoemarino.com for more details on it. But we're having a hangout. I'm doing a live Q&A. But I'll play a little cornhole, have a beverage with Bills Mafia. So if you're going to be in town, love to see you on Saturday.
Very good, Joe. Thanks. Enjoy the game, and we'll chat next week.
Thanks, guys.